So today we're going to be talking about B2B content marketing, and I'm going to be walking you through some of the fundamental strategies and frameworks we use to create content marketing strategies for technology, fintech, and fintech companies. So Neil gave me quite a nice introduction, but I am Catherine Strachan. So I'm managing director and head of copy at Coffeehouse Ltd. Coffeehouse is a content marketing agency specializing in deep tech and fintech. So we have a mission to make the world of technology less confusing, more accessible, and educate our audiences on some of the topics that they might be struggling to understand otherwise. So we work with quite a lot of brands across this space. Klarna is one of our clients in the fintech space. And then we also work in AI, blockchain, software development. We even have a client who does the biometric technologies for airports. So we cover quite a broad spectrum in the tech space and cover almost everything in fintech as well. And most of our clients, I would say 85–90% of our clients are B2B. We do have a couple of B2C, but it's predominantly B2B. So we come at content from that focus area, from a B2B perspective, as well as from a technical technology and fintech perspective. So a lot of the insights I'm going to share with you today come from that background. So before we dive into some of the different approaches we use, I think it's really important to take a moment to talk about the value of content strategies. So there's quite a lot of research out there on this, and the research shows that having a content strategy makes you more effective than if you don't. Yet, a surprising number of organizations actually don't have a documented content strategy. So given the contrast between these two facts, the fact that, okay, 53% of marketers and organizations where content marketing was most effective had a documented content marketing plan. Yet, 37% don't have a documented plan. They might have a rough plan in their heads, but it's not documented. 6% have no plans, and 19% answered no to this question as well, but want to have one. So one of the things we're going to talk about today is how do you actually start creating that content strategy? What do you need to consider? What do you need to think about? And how do you create especially a B2B content marketing strategy that's going to work for your organization? So one of the first places that you need to start, and at least in my opinion, is by understanding your audience. So you would be surprised by the amount of companies that I talk to who approach us and don't have a content strategy at all. I mean, I would say just from my new business conversations that probably 80% of companies don't have customer avatars, don't have customer personas. If they do have customer personas, it tends to be very top level. It tends to be very, Bob who works in finance and doesn't really explore those deeper pain points, those things that make them unique, that make them special, and that by understanding, you'd be able to create a relationship with them and, show them that you care and that, personalize your content to reach them, which is quite surprising because there's quite a lot of interesting research into the power of personalized content and messaging. So this stat from Smarter HQ here that says 72% of consumers say they only engage with personalized messaging. Now, obviously, personalized messaging can be everything from including somebody's name to, perhaps something a bit wider, like understanding their pain points and what keeps them awake at night. And then there's a stat from Salesforce that says 70% of consumers say that a company understanding how they use products and services is very important to winning their business. So both of these stats show and confirm the value of understanding your audience. I always say in a world that is so crowded and so full of content, how can you create content that cuts through the noise and resonates with people if you don't have a customer avatar or customer persona. I often use analogy that it's like standing in a room of thousands of people and trying to get everybody's attention by saying, hey, everyone, if you do that, everybody's going to walk past you. It's going to fall on deaf ears. Nobody's going to listen. But if you say, hey, man in the red shirt, all the men wearing red shirts are going to turn around and look at you. So it's that power of understanding who your customers are, what their pain points are, what keeps them awake at night, and what's the worst case scenario for them if that worry or that concern comes true. And then how can you position your brand to solve that problem for them? Thinking about this is very powerful, and understanding the psychological triggers and emotions that cause people to act in a certain way is essential if you want to get people to act in a certain way. If you want them to contact you or buy from you or engage with you in some way, you need to understand the factors that are going to make them engage with you. So essentially, boiled down, a customer avatar sets out who you want to work with, their pain points, and everything essential about them. So it's a fictional representation of who you want to work with. And when I say who you want to work with, it is important to note that it might not be the people that you're currently working with. So quite often, two of the most common things I hear when I ask people who do you want to work with, they either tell me who they currently work with, or they tell me that they want to work with everyone. And both are relatively poor answers. The first, wanting to work with everyone is a poor answer because of how I explained, trying to create messaging that applies to everyone essentially ends up applying to no one. The second one is perhaps a good answer if you're already working with the people that you want to be working with in a perfect world. But that's not always the case, especially for brands who are growing quite quickly or have gone through a transition phase or an evolution, or who are, in startup mode, because often when you get started, you don't have this really mature understanding of your ideal customer, and because that takes time to cultivate. So it's worth noting that, as we continue and go forward. So as I explained, this is a really great quote, but when you speak to everyone, you speak to no one. It's very true. You cannot create messaging that is going to apply to everyone. We operate in a very crowded marketplace. Almost everybody from my grandmother to my 3-year-old daughter interacts with the internet in some way. And the messaging that is going to work for, my 80-year-old grandmother is not going to work for my 3-year-old, clearly. So it's the same when it comes to marketing your product, your solution. You're not talking to everyone. You can't possibly talk to everyone. And if you do try to talk to everyone, what you get is that vanilla marketing fluff that doesn't make an impact on anyone, which is something that we want to avoid. Both in your website content and in your blog content and your long form content, you want to avoid creating fluff that doesn't resonate with anyone. You want to create content that is very effective, that is engaging, and in a way it helps you dequalify people who are not right for you. As all business owners will know, there's nothing worse than trying to work with a prospect or a customer who is not a good fit for your organization. So I touched on most of these points, but customer avatars matter because they help you create laser sharp messaging. So that is not the vanilla fluff. That is messaging that actually cuts through the noise and helps you resonate with your audience. When you understand your customers, you then also understand the ideas and topics that they want. So what are they interested in? What kind of information are they looking for? And how can you deliver valuable, meaningful, personalized content? It also gives you a very important opportunity to align with their core beliefs to show that you understand them. Most people, even in B2B space, buy from people that they like. So if you can position your brand as a, the place that already understands their pain points, that already understands the struggles that they're going through, and shows that you can solve them, you are going to have far more conversions than if you don't. So when you go about creating a fictional avatar, one of the best places to start is by questioning and thinking about this question. So if you could work with anyone, who would it be? Who is your perfect customer? What does their organization look like? Do you want to work with big enterprise corporates? And do you specifically want to work with the CTO in those big enterprise corporates? Or are you more geared towards small family-run businesses and you want to work with founders? Neither answer is wrong or right, but it's about thinking about you and your business and who you want to align with and who you want to attract. So on a more tactical level, customer avatars typically include surface level features like age, gender, their position at work, their goals, in the sense their professional goals. It also includes more psychological things like their pain points, what keeps them awake at night, what are they worried about, how do they view the world, and what are their core values, what do they really care about, and then what motivates them as well. And then also from a marketing point of view, these people will already have content habits. They'll already have social media channels that they engage with regularly. And it's much easier for you to engage with them in a way that they're already active on than to start from scratch. So a great example is, if your customer avatar reads Forbes, then perhaps it'd be a really great idea for you to have a feature in Forbes. Or perhaps, rather than LinkedIn, perhaps they're really active on Twitter. So therefore you should shape your strategy around Twitter. You should be on Twitter too, because that is a great opportunity for you to connect with them. So essentially fishing where the fish are, rather than, trying to avatar tells you a lot about who they are on a surface level. It tells you who they are on a deeper level. And it tells you how you can start to build a relationship with them. You might also want to consider things like what sort of information do they need before speaking to someone in your sales team. So your sales team will hear a lot of the similar questions over and over and over again. And a great way to cater to this audience is to put those answers on your website. I mean, in a form of a long form blog or an FAQ, because if people are asking your sales team, that's only the tip of the iceberg. There will be a lot of other people out there who are not asking. So what are the most common questions that your sales team hears from prospects? You can also look at it from an SEO angle. So what search terms are customers using to find your products or solutions like yours? Tools like Google Search Console will tell you that. Where do they already spend their time online? As I discussed earlier, what followers, publications, platforms do they engage with regularly? Again, something that I discussed earlier, and a great opportunity for you to get in front of them. So this is an example of what your customer avatar might look like when you're finished with it. So you have, top level stuff about who they are, where they live, what their job is, but then you have deeper core values and beliefs. And these are really important because this is how you're going to connect with them. You also want to identify, their pain points and what they need and want from a service provider, from a product. Because we're talking B2B, quite often you're going to have more than one person in that decision-making process. So for example, this marketing manager, Freddie, he needs to go to the CEO to get final sign-off. And it's worth understanding what both parties need so that you can make sure your marketing provides the answers that both are looking for. Quite often, they'll be looking for slightly different things. So when you're creating your customer avatars, think about that decision-making process. Who does Freddie, or whoever, whatever you name them, who does Freddie need to take your information to get final sign off? It's very rare in B2B that you will only have one person weighing in on that decision. So it's definitely worth considering. So that you really want to start with customer avatars, because it's going to shape a lot of the other things that you do. Once you have a good understanding of your audience, you can then start to turn these insights into content. So I'm going to tell you now about one of the approaches we use at Coffeehouse when we create content. So there's a method called the content pillar method, and it helps boost brand awareness and champion you for specific topics. So for us as a content marketing agency, it might be things like SEO, copywriting, and content marketing. And these content pillars kind of serve as your North Star when it comes to creating content, and we're going to build a strategy that falls underneath this. So you build that strategy first by selecting a head term. So head terms, there's an SEO element to this as well, which I'm not going to go into today because it's a much broader, longer conversation. But a head term should essentially align with your deeper business objectives and center around your unique selling point. So in other words, if you could be known for one thing, what would it be? So this head term, for us, it might be something like SEO, copywriting, content marketing. So these align with specific customer avatars. There's an audience out there who wants these specific things. It should be relevant to that customer's needs, desires, and pain points. And it's essentially going to act to build awareness and nurture prospects to the funnel. So you become known for, in our case, SEO, copywriting, content marketing. Once you've chosen a head term, you then choose a core term. So the core terms support the head term by building out the bigger picture and adding content. In other words, they're your strategic sweet spot. So this is, if we're still, on the concept of a pillar, this is going to be the middle of the column that's going to support that head term. And it provides a strategic focus for content creation. It should still be aligned with business objectives and your customer avatars. And it's important to note that different core terms may work for different audiences. So depending on what tool you use for your SEO and content marketing, there are several great tools out there that will help you with this. So we use SEMrush. So in topic research, you can put in a keyword like content marketing, and then you can see all the different core terms you might use. So you might do something around marketing channels or social media platforms, or say landing pages. Obviously not all of this is going to be super relevant. So, Dollar Shave Club is probably not relevant to us, but this starts to point you in the right direction. Once you choose core terms, you then want to choose subtopic content. So subtopic content supports a core term to improve its visibility and ultimately get it to rank. So subtopics are often in the form of questions. So this is a great opportunity to pull in some of the insights from your sales team here. It also supports a core term. So we're essentially building this pillar, right? So this is going to be the base if we're still using that analogy. And it boosts visibility for core terms. So by creating subtopic content, you're boosting visibility from the head term to the core term, and improving, what people know you for. In the same tool, underneath those little cards we saw earlier, you can click on them and they'll give you ideas for articles. So say I chose landing pages as a core term. I have questions here that might act as long form articles or long form content, perhaps even video content, like what is a landing page? You could write an article on that, or you could create a short video. What are the best practices in creating a landing page? And you start to get some really great ideas for content. So a good example of a content pillar is something like content marketing. So this is a head term. It has a very healthy search volume in terms of SEO. And then under that, you might have a core term like landing page. So again, healthy search volume. So if you landed on page 1 for these things, you'd potentially be driving thousands of people to your site every month who are looking for content marketing and landing pages, which if you create landing pages as a service, that's a great thing to achieve. So underneath that landing page core term, you might create subtopic content like what is a landing page, how to create a landing page, how to write a good landing page. So once you start to have this framework to work within, and you start to have subtopic content ideas, you then want to turn it into a content calendar. So I'm going to tell you quickly about some of the things that we normally include in our content calendars. So you might have the article title, you might have a target keywords that you're going to capture, you might have an article synopsis, which is a 2 to 3 line breakdown of what your article is going to be about. You're going to line that with a target audience or market. Special market is especially important if you're a global brand. This is where you're also going to line it to the content pillar. It's important to create content throughout the funnel. So you might also identify the awareness stage that the prospect will be in when they read this article. And you want to pull any internal or external links you find while doing your research. So essentially, if done correctly, a content calendar should give you enough of a groundwork to work from that if you were hit by a bus or couldn't come to work that day, somebody else could pick this up, know exactly what you're going to write about, and still produce the content. So it allows your content strategy that we talked about at the very beginning to stand on its own, bring the whole team together, and ensure that it can continue whether you're on holiday, whether you're out of the office, or whether you don't have time to pick it up. That way you have a whole team on board who can create content, and you can continue to produce content on a consistent basis, which is essential if you want to be ranking for competitive keywords or boosting brand awareness. It can't just be an ad hoc, when you feel like it. It has to be regular and consistent. So this is essentially what the content calendar might look like. So you have your article title, your SEO keywords, your content pillar, your article snapshot. You might even put a due date of when you want to deliver that article, when you want it to go live. So that brings me to the end of today's session. And I would be more than happy to take any questions at this point. I know I covered quite a lot of ground in a very short period of time, so please shout if you have any questions at all.